Say, Mike, why'd the chicken cross the road?
I don't know. Why did the chicken cross the road?
To listen to Battle of the Network shows talk about Hee Haw. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome back to Battle of the Network shows. Mike here with Rick.
Hey, everybody.
And today is the first of this season's poll shows. We put up a poll on our website, also on our Facebook page and our Facebook group, and got some votes. And the category was, what do we call this, rural shows or country?
Yeah, maybe like rural.
I think we used rural.
I think it was
How
rural.
many times can we say rural?
Rural.
And choices were The Dukes of Hazzard, Carter Country, and our winner, Hee Haw.
Yes. All shows got support, but
Yep.
Hee Haw edged out the others, so the people have spoken, and that's what we're going to cover on this episode.
That's right.
But at some point in the future, maybe down the road in a future season, we'll get back to those other ones.
Yeah. I mean, it did seem there was interest. I don't know if I've ever seen Carter Country, so I'm both curious and I don't know. I don't know what.
Trepidatious.
Yeah. You know, I mean, our boy Victor French is in it, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit before my TV watching time.
Yeah.
And hasn't been syndicated as far as I know, so that's more of a rarity for sure.
Right. Dukes of Hazzard, of course, will be potentially problematic. Probably worth discussing.
I think so. And It was a huge hit, and I know I watched a lot growing up, so that would definitely be an interesting episode down the line. But for now, we've got another classic, Hee Haw.
Hee Haw. If you don't know, Hee Haw is a variety show that was on the air for an astounding amount of time.
Really,
in
yeah.
different forms. Right, in 1969 to 1992. Is that about right?
More or less, yeah.
And then it had like one season in 96 or 97.
Yes. So it was on CBS for the first several seasons.
Yeah.
Then it went into first-run syndication until 1993, which I think was the end of the 92-93 season.
Okay.
And then Nashville Network picked it up for 1 year.
Yeah.
After showing it in reruns, they commissioned new episodes, which I don't remember that at all.
No.
Now, 96, 97 was probably not a prime time for me to be watching Nashville Network and Hee Haw, but
Right.
I really don't remember that they did new episodes for TNN.
No. And I think like the last season before that was mostly a kind of a repackaging kind of deal anyway.
Yeah. Kind of like what Soul Train did for a couple of years there
Yeah.
on their way out. They kind of show Soul Train classics
Right.
and keep it going, and then finally just kind of go off into the night.
Yeah. And so when it left CBS, it was part of the so-called purge of rural-based shows, right?
Yes, it was a popular show, but along with Mayberry, RFD, Green Acres, they got the boot.
Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes, I think that was one of them too. Some long-running shows that were still popular. They decided to go for more urban and urbane demographics.
Right. But then he rose again from the ashes of the burned-down cornfield.
Yes, and did very, very well. I mean,
Yeah.
anything that's on for 20-some years is impressive, but it did very good ratings in syndication. And I remember it being a fixture of Saturday nights, you know, that Saturday evening period.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it regularly, but I remember being aware of it.
There was definitely a period where it was a regular thing in our house, I think. And I remember enjoying it, which we didn't listen to country music, really, but I think maybe it was more acceptable to my parents than other music or something. I don't know, but we definitely watched it some. And all just as soon as I started watching it, it's like, oh yeah, it's that guy, oh that guy, you know, all those faces and the basic gist of the sketches. And sketches might be a little too much of a word for the bits, the skit. These might fall into the skit category.
Yeah, and it was it was molded seemingly on Laugh-In,
Yeah.
which was very popular at the time when this started. And I don't know, it's interesting because in many ways, I think it is similar to Laugh-In, but I'm not sure that it has the same reputation as Laugh-In. It was way more long running and a little bit different, but some of the humor was relatively similar. Maybe just a little bit simpler than Laugh-In, but Laugh-In wasn't exactly doing sophisticated, witty, well-scripted comedy. They were just throwing a lot of things at people very fast and putting all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I suspect that Hee Haw, because of the rural demographic and the country bumpkin type image it was putting out there, I think it was undervalued probably and maybe underappreciated. I'm not saying it was great art, but it did well what it was doing, and it's well produced. But it's almost was really a punchline for many years, and probably still is today.
Right. And I don't know if it was advertised or pushed as a sort of counter to the counterculture, or Laugh-In is considered sort of part of the counterculture, although, like you're saying, it's maybe not as sophisticated as that, just has the trappings of it.
Right.
So, I wonder about that, if it was positioned that way, or just as a family show with scantily clad women, but
right.
a family show nevertheless.
Right.
And really, and I assume the biggest difference really is the music. Mm-hmm. It's such a big part of the show. Yeah,
it really is. It's built around country music. Laugh-In seems to be just built around humor.
Yeah.
There's not as much a sense of setting and place in Laugh-In. It's just sort of generic, like you say, it's sort of counterculture, but it's almost like a corporate co-opted version of the counterculture.
Yeah.
And actually, that might be, Laugh-In could be something we could talk about another time. But with Hee Haw, it was definitely built around country music, and it seems like to me that it was embraced by the country music establishment because so many of those stars were on Hee Haw right from the beginning.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, country music, they're smart.
Yeah.
Here's another way to get audience.
Right, and the show was produced in Nashville and even at Opryland, right, for many years after moving from CBS.
But produced by Canadians.
Yes, that's right.
And starring a couple Canadians.
Yeah, well, the Canadians can get their country on too, I guess.
Sure, yeah, they got their, Calgary and all of that. They got a lot of empty space up there.
They sure do. And, if I may I do a brief reading?
You may.
Talking about the reputation of Hee Haw. Mm-hmm. A recent warehouse find, I will say, to the vast archives at Culture Shark. The Vault of Coolness, as I like to call it, on cultureshark.blogspot.com.
Right, and thank you for sharing the vault with the crack research team.
I'm glad to open it up every now and then for the good of the show and for the good of the listeners.
And when they go in, they have certain rules they have to follow, right?
Indeed.
They have to wear white gloves.
True.
They can take notes, but they can't. Can they photograph things? I imagine they can.
With some restrictions, yes.
Okay.
It's climate controlled.
No flash photography.
They have to. We do not allow flash photography.
And they can take notes.
They certainly can.
But they can't remove the items.
Right.
Now you can. You've brought this.
Of course, yes. Yes, and usually the team is pretty good about following the rules.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we'd gone in there. I was pleasantly surprised by how polite they were.
And good. And they cleaned up after themselves.
Well, I'll talk about that off air. I don't want to ruin this joyous occasion of talking about Hee Haw with such a pedestrian matter. But I have a book called TV Turkeys. Mm-hmm. This was written a while ago, written by Kevin Allman, and the subtitle is An Outrageous Look at the Most Preposterous Shows Ever on Television. Many of the shows in this book are notorious flops, like the $1.99 beauty pageant, the Chuck Barris game show, Super Train. And then infamous shows with weird concepts like My Mother the Car. However...
What's weird about that?
My Mother the Car?
Yeah.
What's weird about that is that somebody thought Jerry Van Dyke was worthy of having his own show for...
You're right, yeah.
But that's just my personal
R.I.P.
bias against Jerry Van Dyke. I was surprised to find that Hee Haw is in this. Because, as we've mentioned, Hee Haw was very successful, and I was looking more about, I thought it would be more like Bombs. But Hee Haw is in here, and I'm going to read this brief paragraph here that will show you the author's attitude, which I think is probably indicative of a lot of people's attitude towards Hee Haw.
Okay.
When CBS debuted Hee Haw in 1969, it seemed to be a bucolic answer to Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Set in a strange Netherland, where one's mother was just as likely to be one's sister. Hosted by popular country western musicians Roy Clark and Buck Owens, Hee Haw passed over the flower power movement in favor of good old-fashioned corn power. It was even filmed in Nashville, free of any influence by the CBS Television City Slickers. Or maybe I should say CBS Television City Slickers, because Television City was the home of their studio. So right there, I mean, it's a pretty condescending attitude.
Yes. I mean, the implied incest part of that.
Yeah, that's a
which was really just they had a limited cast.
Yeah.
People were playing multiple characters. And what's wrong with corn?
No, there's nothing wrong with corn.
Well, maybe there is, but
well,
I don't know about spelling corn with a K.
Yes, it was Cornfield County.
Yeah.
The fictitious home of the Hee Haw verse.
County was also spelled with a K.
Yes.
There was something else condescending in there, but...
the City Slickers, the CBS City Slickers.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of...
The Strange Netherland.
No.
Debuting in 1969.
Very.
No, that's pretty much
very
a fact.
condescending.
Yeah.
Yeah. In general, it seemed a little bit. Yeah, I guess the whole in Nashville free from the City Slickers part.
Yeah, I think the very inclusion of it is telling. Now, Hogan's Heroes is also in the book, which is obviously a conceptual thing.
Yeah, that is a little bit.
But really, I mean, Hee Haw, I'm not saying I'd want to watch a bunch of these in a row, but as you know, I have watched some of these recently through the glory of RFD TV, which it surprises me that that's the only outlet that's been showing these for years. Then again, now that I think about it, Nashville Network, you'd think would have been showing it in reruns for years, but then going back and looking at it, well, Hee Haw was still on in the years when Nashville Network was still showing country programming, so I guess that explains that.
Yeah. Now, of course, you to add to the vault of coolness, you bought a massive Hee Haw set.
Well, I thought I bought a massive Hee Haw set, but it turned out I was treated like a country bumpkin myself by those fast-talking Yankees that run a certain retail website, a large retail website, one that's notorious for lumping reviews of different forms of products together in one, and duplicating those across all the various products.
Right.
Therefore, when I thought I was getting a great deal on a 6 DVD set, or a 6 episode set, I got a 1 DVD set consisting of 2 episodes.
Oh.
However, both episodes are, uncut.
Yeah.
They're reasonably good quality. I mean, Hee Haw was...
The videotape.
Was shot on, but they didn't do anything weird to them, so I'm satisfied with the purchase.
Yeah, and I guess with all the music and combining that with Time Life, that it would be hard to get a discount set with a lot of these.
Yeah, I think it would be probably maybe impossible to get a complete series sets of these, so Time Life created a huge, massive collection, although maybe not massive for hardcore fans that would like more episodes. But then instead of licensing music and clearing more episodes, what they do, which Time Life tends to do, is they break down that big set into endless variations and subsets. And this DVD, Hee Haw Salute, is one of those many permutations of the Hee Haw collection that Time Life licensed and issued.
Right.
So there are 2 episodes on this, 162 and 169. And these are both from season 7. And we watched both of these for the podcast. I looked up the air dates. Unfortunately, they weren't in the booklet. No. Which was disappointing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of shows kind of what a dumbed down release this is.
Right.
That they don't really treat it with a lot of respect.
They didn't even have the year
in
there anywhere.
No, and even I think in information when you're looking for the set, it's almost like they're trying to hide that. Maybe just de-emphasize the fact that you're not getting... I don't know, they list episode numbers, but it's almost like they're trying to... They don't want you to know the years. Maybe they don't want it to seem dated or something.
It's Hee Haw.
I know.
Although, I don't know, it is set in a strange nether time.
Yes.
Even. It's a little hard to... is it 1975, which is when these aired? Or is it 1935? Some of the phones would suggest it's maybe 1935.
That's a good question. And actually, one thing I was wondering when I was watching these and thinking about the show is, do you consider Hee Haw a 70s show or an 80s show? Like, it was on when I was growing up more in the 80s, but it just feels like a 70s show.
Yes.
And as I thought about this, I thought, well, it seems like it's smack dab of our kind of BOTNS sweet spot, because like I think of that country chic time of like Jimmy Carter and and Urban Cowboy, so like late 70s, early 80s kind of thing, and to me that's what I would associate Hee Haw with. But of course that was one small stretch in the rich history of Hee Haw.
Yeah, Hee Haw is eternal.
Yes, Hee Haw is eternal.
No, but it predated that, and There's a question, and I think this will come up on another show we're going to be talking about in a week or two. Is part of it a reaction to the culture of the 60s, the so-called culture of the 60s, or is it just a piece of it? Kind of, well, I already brought that up in a way. Like, is it counter culture, or is it just, well, here's something for people who like country music?
Yeah, or I mean, maybe a show that like everybody could watch, reaching multiple demographics. Yeah. If you take out the country part of it, it could theoretically appeal to young people, old people.
Right.
Now, nowadays, I'm sure it's seen as just a show that only old white people would watch.
Yeah.
But back in the day, you only had a couple of TV networks to choose from. You didn't have a lot of options, so something that the whole family could watch was more desirable.
And it's silly, and it has music. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not topical.
No.
And I guess it was one of those things that, I guess Laugh-In did that too, that they filmed, like all the comedy things in blocks.
Right.
So it's only a couple weeks a year or something.
Yeah.
And then they filmed the music. I read that that's the only part filmed in front of an audience, so I didn't really get a feel of that on these.
Yeah, I got the impression that they did hold tapings for the comedy sessions too, but I don't think all of them. Like some of the skits, they probably didn't have an audience, but some of them maybe they did. And I think another thing they did is they also had some short film segments. And I was also watching some of the very early Hee Haws, just some clips from that. And I think one thing, I could be wrong on this, but one thing that strikes me, I think maybe from the beginning in the CBS years, they might have used a little bit more of those film segments than they did later. I think maybe they just realized, why bother?
Yeah.
Or maybe just reuse some old ones or something like that.
Right.
But I think the Laugh-In influence was there at the beginning, but maybe as the years went on, they kind of used less of like those filmed interstitial segments.
I wondered too, and I didn't see any evidence of this, if they maybe repeated segments like Sesame Street does, or that they maybe didn't film. I don't know how many episodes they had in a season. Let's say 26. 26 hotel sketches.
Right.
Maybe they only had 10 hotel sketches, and they just kept reinserting them. I mean, they go by so quick that I don't know if I would go. Other than, like, some of those feature the guest star, but I don't know that I would notice.
Right.
Especially watching it the way you would have been watching it week to week and not sitting there.
I don't believe they did, but they certainly could have.
Yeah.
I mean, and the other thing is, we can talk. We'll talk about some of the cast members, but there was so much. There's a lot of consistency with the actors too that they definitely could have gotten away with that.
Yeah.
I don't think they did, but we can look into that. But now that you mention it, they certainly could have. I hadn't even considered that.
And I imagine, like, when they were filming these blocks, it would be like they just set up and do every doctor sketch.
Right.
And then they'd clear that set and do the next thing. And it seems very efficient and yet very weird.
Yeah, it does. It does. But, yeah. And then they just edited it all together. And what you got was a very fast-paced, which is, you don't normally associate that term with shows about, rural lifestyle or the South, but
hey, once you hear Roy Clark play banjo,
that's a good point. Yes, many of his musical numbers were pretty fast paced, actually.
Yeah.
So the two episodes that we watched and are going to talk about, and we kind of might jump back and forth and talk a little bit more general about these rather than going through sequentially. They aired in season 7 of Hee Haw, so October 25th, 1975. And December 13th, 1975. So late in the year 1975. And the first episode, 162, had Freddy Fender and Melba Montgomery as the musical guests. And 169 had Johnny Cash. Along with La Costa Tucker, who was the sister of Tanya Tucker.
I had to go searching for her.
Yeah.
Who was La Costa?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see it once you know.
Uh-huh.
But, I wouldn't have guessed. No. Until I looked her up. Now, I just want to give just a little bit of context here, because I thought this was interesting. So those dates I gave were premiere dates. I think most of the country, it's fair to say, the show did air Saturdays, and I think often at 7 p.m. Was kind of like the standard in each market. And, another thing I'll mention, too, is Hee Haw was popular not just in the South, but it was syndicated everywhere.
Yeah.
And did a following across the country, not just in, stereotypical country places.
Right, yeah.
But, so that first episode on October 25th, 1975, so if this was on at 7, and then, interestingly to me, can you guess what was on? Okay, well, ABC had another variety show leading off that night, 8 p.m., the original Saturday Night Live with Howard Cosell. There was an episode of that. CBS, this is Saturday night, they had the Jeffersons, and also on that night was one of the most famous episodes in television history. Can you guess what that might be? And it's interesting because, in a way, it might it is a little contrast to Hee Haw, and it kind of shows maybe some of the dichotomy, or maybe not. The Mary Tyler Moore Show. It was the famous Chuckles Bites the Dust episode premiered that night.
Wow.
So this first episode, you'd have 7 o'clock. You'd have Hee Haw, and then just you'd have the Jeffersons.
Now, Hee Haw was in syndication by then, right?
Correct. Yes.
But was it often syndicated on CBS?
Well, I don't mean to say that Hee Haw was a CBS show.
Right.
But just that.
But it could have been.
Yeah, it could have been on many CBS stations.
Yeah.
But I just found it interesting that Hee Haw's on at 7 o'clock. Probably very popular, and then like a half hour later, you have one of the most famous sitcom episodes, one that's considered one of the more sophisticated shows of its era.
Right.
And one of the shows that arguably pushed out the likes of Hee Haw on CBS just several years earlier.
And you have the Jeffersons, which is urban.
Correct.
Not white.
Right.
Mostly.
And Bob Newhart.
Bob Newhart, which is urban and very white.
Yes. Correct. And the later episode in December was pretty much the same thing. The Saturday Night lineup with Bob Newhart. And Carol Burnett was on 10 p.m. At that time on CBS. And ABC would have SWAT and Matt Helm. And NBC, I think, was showing movies on Saturday nights at that time.
Okay.
So that's kind of what else was going on Saturday nights.
Yeah.
But
wasn't the Muppet Show had started by then too, right?
1975. Yeah. Well, the original Saturday Night Live would be premiering this season too.
Oh.
So it might have been like a year or two after that.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Jim Henson's Muppets were appearing on that original Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
So we had through the courtesy of DVD, we revisited a couple of these episodes. Mm-hmm. I named the musical Guess.
Yeah.
But I think we haven't really mentioned. Well, I guess we did sort of mention, but two musical stars of the show.
Yeah.
The show was really built around Buck Owens and Roy Clark. Right?
Yeah, both very talented. And it's funny, like Buck Owens, I just like a lot of people knew from Hee Haw growing up, and then he had this, I guess, a kind of resurgence, and you started to hear about him and as being sort of like at the vanguard of a kind of country, like a stripped down, less polished country music, and really respected by a lot of different people. And of course the Beatles covered one of his songs, and so that was just it was interesting to find out. Oh, he's this kind of, I don't want to say edgy guy, but the Bakersfield sound with Merle Haggard and a few other people. And I think growing up, when I was watching, I had more of an affinity for Roy Clark. Mm-hmm. And of course he really is like a virtuoso guitar and banjo player, and I think was always had a comedy part to his, like that was always part of his act.
Right.
Like doing impressions and things, musical impressions.
Yeah, I got the impression that Roy Clark was more of like maybe a natural all-around entertainer.
Yeah. And
Buck Owens maybe considered himself more of a musician, and I think...
I did read, and I don't know, it was a quote from his autobiography, which came out after he died, but was based on transcripts where he was really down on Hee Haw. Said he just did it for the money.
Yeah.
And because it was only a couple weeks a year.
Right.
He couldn't pass it up, but he didn't enjoy it.
I did see that the author of that book kind of downplayed that and thought that it was sensationalized a little bit.
Yeah.
That if anything, he thought that he had a good time making the show, but he was disappointed in the sense that it came to define him, and he ultimately wished that he had spent less time in the show because he didn't stay the whole time. He did wind up leaving, and for a while, Roy Clark was kind of like the main guy in the show. But yeah, growing up, I didn't really know anything about Buck Owens except the fact that Ringo did the Act Naturally song on the one Beatles album, but I didn't know anything else about Buck Owens' career. And then, Dwight Yoakam sort of like paid homage to him quite a bit and kind of brought him back.
Yeah.
But other than that, Roy Clark was more familiar to me. I think he was on The Odd Couple, and I just remember him being on other things besides Hee Haw.
Commercials.
Yeah, commercials, exactly.
That guitar teaching system where you put stickers on the frets.
Oh, yeah.
A staple of TBS commercials, I think.
Yeah.
And I like the guitar player in the Buckaroos died 1974, so around this time, and apparently that Buck Owens didn't do much touring for a long time because of that. Mm. Like it he was devastated by it. Like it was his buddy.
Well, that's another thing is not just Buck Owens, Roy Clark, but they brought on legit musicians, and there were a lot of really good musicians playing with them.
Yeah. And
even some of the cast members, were well known for
the Hager twins. Is that their name?
Yes, the Hagers, the Hager twins.
Which was an
interesting phenomenon they were.
As soon as I saw those guys, I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize them, but just because they're kind of weird floppy hair.
Yeah, I mean,
long faces.
You get the impression that they were meant to be like something for the teenage girls or something, like they were like the sex symbols.
Right.
And maybe today they might seem kind of like unconventional sex symbols, but
yeah.
There's just something bizarre about twins in this country setting. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't see them interacting a lot in the comedy. They just would come on and do the musical numbers.
Yeah, some of the other people have a foot in both in comedy and music.
Right.
Or like Minnie Pearl and Grandpa Jones.
Yeah, Grandpa Jones is like a super respected banjo player, I guess.
And I bet he was like 50 when that
started. And I think that's another thing. I think in the earlier episodes, I think he and Minnie Pearl have more presence.
Yeah.
Whereas even by this time, I think we see Minnie Pearl in a couple of sketches, but she doesn't seem to be as big part of the show. Although I remember her, I would think of her as one of the big stars.
Yeah. My family, took a trip to Nashville one summer, and we went to the Grand Ole Opry, and Minnie Pearl was like she was the star.
Really?
It was exciting.
Yeah.
She walked down the aisle right past us.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. The other band I remember from that, I don't remember their name. I want to say their name was Five Guys. They ate hamburgers and sang. No, but they were sort of like a country kind of, like a vocal group, almost like a doo-wop in a country fashion. But they had on like satin jackets, like bowling kind of bowling team jackets with their name on it.
Very nice.
Crack research team might need to get on.
Yeah.
That I don't know that they were. They were playing a weekday at Opryland.
Right.
I don't know. How big a deal they were.
But they were a big deal to you.
Well, they stood out for some reason.
Yeah. It sounds like it. But yeah, Grandpa Jones was a player, and Ronnie. I can't remember the last name. One of the two that has like the gap tooth gimmick.
Oh, yeah.
And is in the arguing couple sketches. Yeah. And really on the show, when I've seen her, I only remember her seeing her as a comedian.
Yeah.
But apparently she was a super accomplished banjo player too, and was very, very skilled player. And I even read, doing a little research, I read one account that claimed that she showed up Roy Clark one time and was, when they were jamming together, and was kind of scolded not to do that.
Yeah.
Not at Roy's behest, but somebody with the show saying you don't want to upstage the star. The star, yeah.
Yeah. Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. So.
And then the Archie Campbell is sort of was already a established humorous singer or something.
He was an entertainer.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had people with all kinds of, and apparently Junior Samples.
Right.
Apparently he's a comedian. It was already a comedian, but if you look at him, he's such an amateurish part of his act, which I guess is part of the gimmick.
Yeah. What did I read about? He did something, and somehow Chet Atkins saw it or heard it and told this Archie Campbell about it, and then they did a record together. But he's very unpolished.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And another thing is, like, a lot of the people often appear to be reading from cue cards, and I think they're intentionally like playing that up sometimes.
Yeah.
And probably Junior is one of them, and if that's all an act, he's brilliant at it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. I guess. He's totally convincing.
Yeah.
But he's probably another one of the more famous ones.
Yeah.
In the Cornfield regulars. And then, we might be a good time to mention the Hee Haw Honeys.
The Hee Haw Honeys.
The cast of women, and many of them were actually on the show for quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple I recognize. Well, I don't know if one would be considered a Hee Haw Honey. There's like a woman with like just straight blonde hair who would a lot of times like pitch to another sketch or something.
Maybe Kathy Baker?
Yeah.
The one that kind of, the Prairie Dawn?
Oh, she's the announcer, right? Yes, the Prairie Dawn one.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yep, she was one of the ones I think I most remember, and I think she was on for many years.
Yeah, I guess she wouldn't be a Hee Haw Honey.
I think so, although she was kind of more like more the host, and had more of the girl next door appeal, maybe.
Yeah, and she's wearing overalls that go, the full length.
Yes. Contrasting some of the...
Barbie Benton is one of them.
Yes.
And she's in these episodes.
Yeah.
I don't remember
Lisa Todd, I think, was one of the tall brunettes.
Okay.
And one of my favorites was Marianne.
Marianne.
One word, Marianne. She was married to Kenny Rogers at the time.
Oh.
Marianne Gordon.
Yeah.
And Marianne Gordon Rogers. And I always liked her. It was one of my favorites. But she has kind of more of a sophisticated kind of look, I think.
Who's the one that does the like the love advice sketch?
A blonde?
No, she's a brunette. She's sitting on a couch in the first episode.
That might be Lisa Todd, maybe?
Maybe, yeah. I think that was a recurring sketch, though, but they pan across her legs.
Yeah, I think that that was a...
And then I don't remember anything after.
Yeah.
Advice to the love... Yeah, Lisa Todd. And later, Goober. We got to mention him.
Oh, yes, George Goober Lindsay.
Yeah, George Goober Lindsay. Playing Goober, I don't,
Yeah, he fit right in, huh?
I guess Goober was like a, like SNL character, so he could just take him with him.
Yeah, I guess it was his intellectual property.
Yeah.
I want to think that there was like a big court case where George Lindsay, defending himself, went to the Supreme Court to argue that it was his character and should not be the intellectual property of CBS television. Well,
now I'm sure if friend of the show Dan is listening, and he knows that George Goober Lindsay played a big role in a trial scene in news radio.
Ah, is that so?
Yes. Well, I think someone sold Jimmy James a bunch of things, including maybe what he claimed was George Goober Lindsay's skull.
Wow.
And then they brought in George Goober Lindsay to help his case.
Was he defended by Matlock?
No.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. There's also a conspiracy theory thing going on there. That's from the 90s. Not our era. I hope I didn't get that wrong, Dan. It's been a while since I saw the episode.
But George Goober Lindsay is no stranger to the courtroom, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's good. So maybe he did, have to go to the legal world to defend his character. But
I was Goober before I was Goober.
Yeah, he sure was.
Maybe they cast him like they saw him doing that, like the Goober character on the Grand Ole Opry or something. And like, oh, just bring that over here.
That could be.
That word's similar to Gomer.
Yeah,
it'll work. And of course, he was out of work after the big rural purge.
Right. So found a home in the cornfield.
That's right.
Let's see. So, are there any other notables in the cast that you'd like to mention?
Gordy, what's his last name?
Is it Tapp? Gordy.
What?
The one of the Canadians.
He's one of the main.
Yes, he's
people.
the one. He was the husband in the bickering couple. Laverne. He played Laverne.
Yes, Gordy Tapp. He plays. Yeah, he's in the bickering couples. He plays the store owner.
Yeah.
He plays he has a sort of Mark Twain character who.
Yes.
I guess started as a Mark Twain character and then became a rich daddy.
Yeah.
And but it's the same thing, and he's just in a bunch of them and very distinctive looking. And he's listed as one of the writers too.
Yes, and he often strikes me as kind of a and maybe this is just thinking about the other show, but sometimes he strikes me as almost like a country Dan Rowan.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of appropriate.
Okay.
I mean, he seems like the go-to guy if they're playing like City Slickers.
Yes, he's a politician.
Yes.
He plays the rich guy who Goober works on his car.
So could you give him a shout? Do you want to?
Oh, and the radio guy.
Oh yes, Don Heron, I think.
Yeah.
And
apparently
like the news.
Yeah, that's his
KORN
character.
News. Yeah.
And it has appeared in other venues playing that character.
Yep.
And I don't get that at all.
The character?
Both of those sketches on this, I didn't. It was like he was speaking a foreign language. I mean, it's full of puns and stuff, and it's like he's giving the folksy news, right?
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, it just weaves around. The only thing I really got was like, and I don't even know if it was an ad lib, but like in one of the sketches there was a chicken like on a roost near him in the radio station, and it moved, and then he reacted to it and made some whole explanation of like why they keep the chicken so high to keep, because their water seeps on the floor, and they thought maybe we should just get ducks.
Right.
And
yeah, some of those recurring features were, less popular with me than others.
Yeah.
Like there's the Colvains or
the Colhains.
The Colhains, yeah. It's basically like four people just sitting there and they kind of talk about their life. I mean,
it's like a boring soap opera.
Yeah. But it's short.
Yeah, I like that.
It was never like one of my favorites.
Okay. I'm okay with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not against it.
Yeah, you're not okay.
But I'm not for it either.
No. Okay.
If you catch my drift.
I think you might be equivocating.
So, I mean, some of the other recurring skits, there's like Minnie Pearl as a school teacher.
I like that. I guess it changed some over different seasons, but then on these, it was like 5 kids and a junior sample with a dunce cap.
Right, like actual kids.
Yes. And had some clever wordplay jokes.
Right, as opposed to like the Spanish television gimmick of having, scantily clad women show up in Girl outfits.
Yeah.
I think like every other Spanish variety show has that segment.
Right.
I could be wrong, but
Well, although I read that in some versions that all the students were adult.
On Hee Haw.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I like it more just with him.
yeah. He definitely stands out. But it's
because I read
funnier.
it just like how he's been held back,
right.
30 times.
Yeah.
Just how it is.
Yep. So there's that. There's the like Nurse Goodbody, I think, with the doctor.
Yeah.
They always have a lot of like. Some of them are just like more settings, like a general store.
Yeah.
And they have these various like cheap sets.
Right.
And there's usually a segment where everybody's just lounging around.
Yeah.
Usually like 2 of the guy comedians and then the Hee Haw honeys like sprawled out in the background.
Yeah. Which I saw the first one and I was like, what? Are all these people high? What? And then I read they're moonshiners.
Yeah.
So they are. I mean, they're not high on drugs, but
they're inebriated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's what's the dog's name?
Beauregard.
It is Beauregard, yeah.
Great name for a dog.
Right. Who has at least on these, there's a sketch where they ask Grandpa what's for dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And he's looking through a window and he says, what's for dinner? Explains it in some humorous way, and then they cut to Beauregard thinking something about it.
Yeah, Grandpa always has that was another recurring bit, and I always get a kick out of the fact that he's like washing a window, but then as soon as he starts talking, he'll just put his hand through the window or something like that. I really remembered Grandpa like as like in these comedy bits, so it was kind of a surprise to me to watch some of the older ones and see him actually like doing a musical number or something. So it was kind of cool. But one of the most notable comedy segments that stood out to me was Roy Clark doing poetry.
Yes.
Do you remember this one?
Claude Strawberry.
Yes. And
it's if anything is dated in these entire 2 episodes, other than Freddy Fender's hair,
yes,
it's got to be Claude Strawberry.
Well, that segment may prove that condescension and stereotyping is a two-way street.
Yes.
Because I think the premise of it was that anybody that would write poetry, a sensitive artist type, must be of a certain persuasion.
Yes.
And Roy Clark is certainly playing it of that persuasion.
Yes, he is.
And with gusto, I will say.
Yes, he's mincing away.
He is, and he seems to be enjoying himself.
And his costume is a little frilly.
Yes. Was he writing with a quill?
Yes, he was.
He was.
Yeah.
He was composing his
poetry.
Works
Yeah.
on the spot there with a feathery quill.
Now, let's play devil's advocate and say maybe this is revealing to us that even in communities that seem that like they might not be tolerant of that, maybe they kind of are. Maybe they're just like, well, or at least the people watching be like, oh yeah, there's one of those guys in every town.
Yeah.
We're not throwing rocks at him every day.
True.
But I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't know.
No, that could be entirely true. Another thing that I think we should mention is.
But it wouldn't fly today.
It wouldn't fly today, but 1975, it was no big deal.
Yeah.
It was just like poking fun at somebody, but it certainly wasn't at all. And it would not even, in many ways, it wouldn't even be considered bigoted.
Yeah, right.
It was just a character he's playing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you could argue that right now that's a character he's playing, but it was definitely, he was sending some signals as to what kind of character he's playing.
Yeah. Right.
So that's one of the comedy segments that stood out to me.
Yeah.
One of the other funniest things in the show, I might save. I don't know if you want to talk about the comedy and then transition to the music, or kind of combine them, but
because some are in between. Yeah,
I think my absolute favorite segment across the 2 episodes we watched involves a little of both.
Okay, go ahead.
It's when Johnny Cash
is
sitting down with Buck and Roy. Doing like the picking and grinning, and as often they would often have, as you mentioned, the guests would often sit in on these shows, and Johnny Cash is right there in the middle. And what they would do is they would have Buck and Roy playing, and everybody, the whole cast, kind of gathered around them, like chanting in the background and stuff. And then they would have the little breaks in the music. They'd stop playing, and then do like a little one-liner, a little comic exchange. And Johnny Cash was great in that.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about his delivery.
Yeah. He was delighted to be there.
Yeah. He really embraced it.
Yeah. I don't remember his jokes right now, but they were good jokes.
And no, I mean, I was actually laughing. I mean, there were standard jokes, a lot of them. I mean, like, kind of wife jokes, mother-in-law jokes, which is a lot what the show did, but they were entertaining, and part of it was just he was so good at it.
And one was about June. I do remember that.
Yeah, I think about, like, getting in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, there's something about that format. And it's, again, it kind of speaks, I think, to the production and the timing of everything, that they would, just be playing and they'd stop, and all of a sudden then you do that, and then right away you go into the song again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's classic, like, variety music, live performance kind of stuff, but it really worked, and especially there with Johnny Cash.
And Buck and Roy they're cooking.
Yeah.
And Roy always gets a little solo at the end. Yeah. Johnny Cash also shoved a pie in someone's face.
That's right, yeah.
Archie Campbell, so there's like a recurring bit with him and it changes who he's with, but singing this song and holding like a sickle, and their backs, in this case, their backs to each other. So he sang a line about Johnny Cash, but then at one point he turned and said, "That's Johnny Cash."
Yeah.
And then Johnny Cash shoves a cream pie in his face.
Yep.
And then there was one thing where it was just like Buck and Johnny just like, "Oh, here's my friend Johnny," and they were just like hanging all over each other laughing.
Yeah.
And nothing really.
Yeah.
Just appreciating their company.
Right. It didn't.
Or was one of those periods for Johnny. I don't know.
Well,
Buck apparently was a clean liver, but
yeah. Johnny Cash didn't have a clean liver at all. He had a very abused liver.
Yeah.
But whatever the case, I really enjoyed him.
Yep.
And he was a standout for sure.
Also, he was definitely in the era of Johnny Cash as a little bit of a weirdo.
Yeah.
Like he had his black on, but he had a jean jacket over it with all these patches on it.
Right.
But then my favorite is he had like those giant like boots that, not cowboy boots. I don't know what kind of boots you call them, but like have laces all the way up the front.
Nice catch. Yeah.
Yeah, and they look really giant because he's a big guy too.
Yeah.
But they're just, to me, they're odd boots.
Yeah.
They're horse riding boots. I don't know what they are.
I think we could say, like, a lot of these, like, recurring bits and really came into the culture. They would do like the gloom, despair, and agony song, or whatever some of the men would sing.
Right.
And eventually, I don't know if they're in this one, but the women had a routine where they do a song about gossiping, like, "You didn't hear it from me," and then they kind of do a joke, but the gloom, despair, and agony seemed like a big one that kind of made its way into the mainstream, and they also would do a segment where they'd announce the population of some town, do a little salute to them, and so kind of
and the cornfield where they're all telling jokes, which I guess is a laughing kind of thing,
right?
Yeah, where it's like just two people popping out of the cornfield and telling these corny jokes.
And then ducking their heads, and then cut to something else. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so, Hee Haw kind of had some, catchphrases and things like that. And I think these two episodes are pretty representative. I think a lot of probably the big things that people would remember were on these episodes. So maybe they were well chosen and not just chosen because they had Johnny Cash and they could clear the rights to Freddy Fender's performances.
Costa, they had a lot of trouble with Costa.
Yeah, it took them like 2 years to figure out who Costa was.
Right,
first. Yeah. Oh, Tanya Tucker.
Right.
Tanya Tucker's sister. Oh, yes, Tanya Tucker. Maybe she can track her down.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess let's talk about the music.
Okay, no, before we get into the music.
Yeah. Let's
talk about a big issue.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure that you've thought about this when watching it because you are. Do you know what I'm going to bring up?
Go ahead. We'll see if it is.
Real versus lip sync.
Yes.
To me, when I was watching these episodes, I don't think I saw a single performance that was actually not mimed or pre-recorded. I think they were all mimed.
Really?
Well, did you see any?
I had a lot. I was definitely obsessed with that. And
there weren't.
Some of the songs is really difficult because there weren't microphones visible. But I give the possibility is if there were boom mics and things and they just wanted to be pretty. Now, there was one Roy Clark song that ended in a fade out, which is a little weird for a live performance.
True.
on the other hand, there was one he did, an instrumental one he did, where one of the musicians started playing before they were supposed to, and he made a joke about it. And that one had microphones.
Yeah.
I feel like that one was probably, because that was like a bluegrass instrumental, so I think that was maybe live. Now, one of the Buckaroos ones I was looking, and I didn't really see any guitar cables. Mm-hmm. Which is a pretty big giveaway.
Yeah, I think
they probably were unique performances, like they recorded them for the show,
right.
Yeah, and then mimed it. But they did a good job because it was hard to tell.
I think they do. I think virtually all the guest performances are the ones that look to me like obviously mimed. The ones that are a little bit more ambiguous are some of the Buckaroos and Roy and Buck.
Yeah,
I tried to research this, and my research indicates that I saw several people claiming that it was a mixture.
Okay.
Like, not all of them were mine, but many of them might have been.
Or it could have even been like the background, the music was pre-recorded and the vocals were live. It's hard to tell because, because sometimes the band wasn't on stage, but they could have been off stage and playing.
Right.
And that's not a big deal. But
I personally think that almost everything on this, you make some good exceptions, but I got the impression that most everything was. But when I was growing up,
Pickin' and Grinnin', that's live.
When I was, so I don't want to disparage Pickin' and Grinnin'.
No.
But my assumption was that there was a lot of live music on the show, and kind of going back and paying more attention to these, it's kind of jarring to me to think that maybe they weren't. That's kind of disappointing because I just always assumed that it was.
That whole period, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Like I know even like in the 60s, and they were still figuring out how to record live music on TV, and that was part of the reason there was a lot of miming. Mm-hmm. But even I think you sometimes see like Ed Sullivan performances, and you can't tell.
Yeah. Well,
part of it's the staging of those sometimes, like people being on weird risers and things, and like or the amps. Just I think maybe they didn't want to show amps on TV.
Yeah, yeah.
It is a thing because I would prefer to see a real performance. Mm-hmm. But I know sometimes you enjoy seeing those mimed performances.
Well, yeah, in a way, I mean, I would prefer to see live performances too. I can appreciate them on one level, but I think you make a good point in that, like on Hee Haw, it's more for a general audience, and I think the camera work and everything is more emphasizing like the singer or the main performers, and not necessarily, okay, camera 3, show me the drummer or something. Whereas, like a lot of those old like Shindig or like the 60s shows, you can tell they're miming because they'll show the drummer or something, and they'll show instruments where either there's one guy in the band goofing off, or it's harder to not play for real and be convincing than it is just like strumming a rhythm guitar or something like that.
Or there's like an instrument that's not.
It's not.
Either not on the stage usually, or not on or one of them's playing something that's not on the record.
Yeah, right.
One of those,
right.
And here even like one of the Buckaroo songs, like there was a piano and I didn't see a piano, but that's not a big deal. It could have just not fit on the stage.
Yeah.
But there was an acoustic guitar in it that was definitely strumming, and the one you could see, the guy was like more finger picking.
Right.
So I don't know what was going on there, and that was one where I was like, does this bass player have a chord?
Yeah.
I can't tell.
Well, everybody certainly would have been capable of playing live very well, and probably without wasting a lot of money. But looking at the way this was made and everything, it certainly wouldn't surprise me if they streamlined the whole production by doing pre-recorded performances. But
which is still better than miming to a record.
Right, and you know what? And it doesn't bother me so much. And probably again in 1975, to the audience that was watching this, I don't think they really cared.
Yeah,
they were probably just happy to see, especially like some of these big guest stars come on and just see them perform.
Yeah.
In whatever fashion, and weren't as concerned as like today.
I think a lot of people don't care about that, and other than the brouhaha when what's her face, Ashley Simpson on SNL. I just think a lot of general audience doesn't care.
I think today, especially like with younger people, it does seem like, I think on Saturday Night Live there was a reputation for their live performances, and there was kind of a thing to uphold. But I don't know. I think just recently there was controversy, like the American Music Awards. Yeah, there's at least one performance where she was lip syncing and everything. And I think it gets attention because everybody's watching and they're going to go on social media and something to talk about. Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe I think you're right. Maybe the general public doesn't care so much.
Like I think rock fans care,
right?
Because it doesn't fit with the spirit of authenticity.
Well, let me put it this way.
But like it's clear that maybe some of the acts that dance a lot, that at least their portions of there's a mix of their live vocals and something pre-recorded, and I don't know if I mentioned this when I talked about my trip to New York, but when I went on the NBC tour, the page showing us the part where they do, like they have an audio studio there, and said, sometimes SNL acts will come in, and part of it is to go over, like after they've done a rehearsal, to go over the sound with the sound guy and work out kinks and things, but that they'll sometimes pre-record portions in there, and said, quite chipperly that that Adele had recorded her own background vocals.
Wow.
Because who would be better to sing with Adele than Adele?
Right.
And it's like, I guess it's not a controversy anymore. Then you're just saying it right here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in something like with the backing track, that I can understand maybe. But if Adele went on and lip synced her whole main track,
right? Because she's a singer. That would be.
I think you've hit on people notice, but they don't necessarily care.
Yeah.
Like during the Super Bowl, if somebody goes on and lip syncs, it's going to get attention, but people might not care unless it's. Yeah. And, if the Who went on and did it, they'd be pilloried for it.
And every time a rock act goes on, there's a whole discussion about were they or weren't they.
Yeah.
And I know the Super Bowl in particular is complicated because of the setting, just getting all the equipment out there and sound in that big an arena, but it can be done.
Yeah. The point is, I do think it was interesting to look at on Hee Haw, and I was kind of watching for that. But
I think the first episode, I think that had the fade out. That was the one that. But otherwise, I was kind of like, oh yeah, this is really good. This seems live. And then the second one, the one with Johnny Cash, I was more like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, along similar lines, I'm not going to name the person, but someone's hair, not Freddy Fender's hair. Someone else's hair. Do you think that was real or not?
Are you talking about one of the musical acts?
No, I'm talking about one of the regulars.
One of the regulars. Okay. Oh, this is where we.
I want to be cautious.
Again, this is in our wheelhouse.
Yes.
Are you talking about one of the main performers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hadn't noticed, to be honest.
Okay.
So.
I don't really know. I couldn't tell. It just.
Is this person still with us, or is this person deceased?
This person is deceased, but yeah.
Okay.
The person had a lot of hair.
I unfortunately, I'm not. I believe I know who you're talking about, and I had noticed it, but
I did a search.
Yeah.
And I only found one suggestion that it wasn't, but it was an answers.com thing, and the person answering all these questions seemed to be a little bit of wiseacre, and suggested that a lot of people were wearing wigs on that show.
Really?
Which, obviously, in the sketches.
Some of the,
But specifically, the question was about this person, and specifically said yes.
So you don't have anything definitive enough to make a declaration on the podcast?
No, and that's why I'm being careful.
Okay.
Yeah. I do know this person has died, though.
Okay. Yes.
Can verify
that. Can verify that.
Right.
Well, I don't think Marianne Gordon was artificially enhanced hair-wise, so
yeah.
I will defend her honor.
Okay.
But, yeah.
But now the terms of musical acts, of course, Johnny Cash, great, and he did Walk the Line, so that was cool. He did. The
other song he did was All Around Cowboy.
Yeah, that wasn't...
It wasn't as good as...
No.
Is Walk the Line.
Yeah.
I actually kind of liked the Roy Clark performances.
Yes.
That he did Love is a Two-Story Word. I see the one extra on the DVD was a listing of all the songs.
Right.
Which is nice. And he did in the other episode he did another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song, which was entertaining.
Yeah. The instrumental I think he did was called Silver Bells, but it wasn't the Christmas song.
No. I kind of enjoyed, I'm looking at the list here, Rednecks, White Sox, and Blue Ribbon Beer by Buck Owens. It was just kind of the twang, and the whole thing was classic country, and it just seemed like the kind of thing that speaks to us.
Yeah. I liked the Freddy Fender stuff. Yeah,
Freddy Fender is kind of one of the more interesting figures in music. I mean, he was kind of a real thing back then, wasn't he?
I think so, yeah, and I don't know much about him, but these songs struck me as, I couldn't quite pigeonhole them in one genre. I mean, there's a little bit of country, but there's also a little bit of, early rock and roll. Yeah. But then I guess it's the Tejano music thing, too. So, there's accordion. And, and he had a good voice, and he played guitar on one of them. Melba Montgomery, she seemed fine. She was more like a sort of classic country balladeer. Yeah. I guess she did a lot of duets with George Jones back in the 60s and was very accomplished as a duet artist. Okay. And
was fairly popular on the country charts. Not as much of a pop crossover as like Freddie Fender or Johnny Cash.
Right.
I didn't really know anything about her.
Yeah.
She has very long hair.
Yeah, and she seemed very pleasant.
Yes.
And then the Costa, she seemed the most like crossover.
Yeah.
Like in style, not in actual. I
think
what
that's
her
fair to say. Yeah.
success was, but that, and this is a little before the big sort of '80s crossover era. But there was a slight hint of rock in the first song, I think. And,
Get on My Love Train.
Yes, Get on My Love Train.
Which is not quite as racy as it sounds when I say it aloud, but yeah, she was kind of the blonde, like sort of country fair blonde, big hair kind of look.
Yeah.
Would that be fair to say?
I think so. But she was like casual dress, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't
I think she was wearing some denim in at least one of those.
Yeah. Not like a Loretta Lynn in a frilly dress kind
of
thing.
Yep. Yeah. The music was entertaining. What did you think about the Hagers?
They were fine.
I guess they only performed in the first.
No, they did in the second one too.
Oh, okay, they're not listed on the
And the other, there was another. I don't know if it's on there either. Was it Kenny something?
Kenny Price.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one of the ones.
The round mound of sound.
Yes, we didn't mention him earlier. He was another fixture of the show.
Yeah, he did like a kind of a rock, almost rock song.
Yeah, actually, the very first Hee Haw began. I think the first musical number on Hee Haw was Johnny Be Good with Buck and Roy doing that, which kind of speaks to your point of.
That sounds cool.
It wasn't necessarily not pure country, but quite a bit of crossover.
Right.
That was, I guess, a big part of the show. Yeah, I was thinking the Hagers were on every episode that I've ever seen of Hee Haw, so I was kind of surprised. But yeah, they're not listed in here. Well, that's another reason
they did. I know
to discount this Time Life DVD release.
Yeah.
Incomplete liner notes here. All they had to do, they had one job, was to list the songs.
Yeah. And
they failed.
No, they were okay. I mean, not surprising. Their voices blend well.
Right. There's some other aspects of Hee Haw. Did you do any diving into the dark side of Hee Haw?
I know a lot of people died.
Yeah, so I guess Kenny Price died during the run of the show, I think. Died young.
Yeah, Junior Sample died. Wasn't that during the run of the show?
I believe it was, yes. And Lulu Roman, the large woman,
right,
was arrested for, was a heavy drug user and was kicked off the show for several years before becoming a born-again Christian.
Oh.
And somebody that we haven't mentioned who was a fixture on the show, I think for the first 5 years or so, was String Bean.
Oh, yeah.
Who was murdered.
Yeah.
In his Tennessee home, and what a sordid story that is. Really, apparently struck fear in the hearts of everybody in the cast.
Wow. Because
they thought he was targeted while he was playing at the Grand Ole Opry on the radio. Somebody, burglars went into his house and figured he wouldn't be around.
Yeah.
And he actually came home and found the burglars, and they murdered him. They were there because they couldn't find money, which he carried around with him and had stashed, but they couldn't find the money, and wound up getting into a confrontation and murdered him and his wife.
Jeez.
And to make a sad story even worse, his grandpa Jones was a neighbor, and he found the bodies the next day.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was really a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And but if anybody's interested, you can do the research. But the other thing I'll say is that apparently a reporter came up with got a scoop on the story, and actually found some of the money that one of the suspects confessed to the reporter, or told the reporter where the money was that they had taken, the little money that they had taken.
Yeah.
The reporter went and found it himself, and didn't tell the police anything about it because he wanted the scoop to appear in the paper before the police got involved. You can tell, and this is in the 1970s, that you could do that, or that would be a factor. And the other thing I read is that the reporter actually observed and was close enough, and was actually there at the scene watching as the police, who had gotten a confession from the other suspect, were looking for the money, like in a pond or something.
Yeah.
And he actually watched and stood there and did nothing while the police looked for evidence in this case, because he didn't want them ruining his scoop.
Then did he turn it over after the scoop?
I think he did.
Okay.
I think he didn't keep it or anything, but yeah. And then
did that affect the court case or the?
No, I mean both of the people had confessed.
But it could have.
Yeah. Yeah, well, probably back in those, if they had some decent representation, like say Matlock or George Goober Lindsay could find somebody for them. Right. They might have been able to get off, but as it was, they both confessed. They were bragging around town that they had done this and everything, so they weren't the smartest criminals apparently. And another part of the story is years later, somebody actually found the money started falling out of near the fireplace where it had been for years, and it was tattered at that point, but like thousands of dollars of string bean savings. And he was a beloved figure in Nashville and in the country music world, and that was one of the big tragedies of Hee Haw. Well, if you watch the early seasons, string bean is on them, and he's called that because he's incredibly tall and thin, and he wore clothes to accentuate that.
Yeah. But
he could play.
So I guess we should wrap up here, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much more to say about Hee Haw. There's a little something for everybody, you could argue, but if you're not into the corny humor, I mean, it's the kind of show where you'll have a joke like, hey, what would you say if you found 50 cents in your what would you have if you had 50 cents in your left pocket and $1 in your right pocket? I'd have somebody else's pants on. That kind of thing. Yeah. If you can handle like maybe 30 of those in an hour, along with some music.
That's, I guess, what else is that I found the comedy kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
And for the most part, not. Maybe because of the pace of it, just I didn't laugh at a lot of it or even follow some of it. But the amount of music was good. If it had been only the guest songs and the comedy, it would have been too much. But the fact that Roy and Buck, each get like a couple numbers. And Hager Brothers and maybe something else.
I think the show is paced brilliantly. It's well edited. It's well produced for what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you could quibble about, you could talk about the writing, the quality of the humor, but for what it's trying to do, it accomplishes it very well. And I enjoy the novelty of it. And, like I said, I've been watching some of it. And granted, sometimes I'd be watching more because, like, Joe Frazier was on Hee Haw, so, of course I have to watch that. But having said that, I think it deserves some respect. I think a lot of rural, and today, we don't get a lot of this kind of rural entertainment, or it's so relegated to maybe one segment or one isolated pockets. I mean, what is the equivalent of like country entertainment, like general entertainment like this? What do we have today?
I don't know. I mean, country music is super mainstream now, but I don't know if there's a one place to say other than like their award shows or something.
Right. I mean, even like in television, Reba McEntire had a sitcom for years, but she had a twang, but it wasn't like built around country lifestyle. Right. If you look at like
King of the Hill would have been maybe the last.
Yeah, I mean that's a good because if you look at politically shows that are thought to represent like more like Tim Allen has a show, this Last Man Standing.
Yeah, he
lives in Colorado. His character is in Colorado.
Yeah,
like the ranch on Netflix is kind of it's a ranch. You don't have a lot of shows about farming, rural, even Midwest, let alone southern kind of cornfield.
What is RFD TV doing? They need to get into original content.
They should. Yeah.
They do have some original content, don't they? More like nonfiction kind of.
I think more like live music
farm
shows.
Reports and things.
Right.
Or maybe that what is it? That Farmers Only or the dating.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they need to branch out into content.
I would welcome that. I would welcome that. It's just funny that kind of that whole type of programming, and we did a poll with 3 options for it that were all around back at the time. Granted, Carter Country wasn't a huge hit, but and now there's almost nothing of this.
Yeah, and
maybe it's part of the fact that society is so politicized and divided. But is it possible to do a non-political show now that would focus on people that live anywhere near a cornfield?
Maybe not right now. Maybe. I don't know. I think it would, even if it were being apolitical, it would be political in its avoiding politics.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But
again, it's like, I'm trying to think of anything that's not really a rural thing. That new Neighbors or whatever that is, or the Neighborhood. Like with Cedric the Entertainer.
Right.
It's like reversing the black people move into a white neighborhood idea, but that's different.
Well, I mean, I think you might be right that it would be seen as being political by being apolitical, but maybe that's, again, proof of just how New York-centric and East Coast biased media is, because if you did a show in New York that was just about relationships, you wouldn't think, oh well, they don't talk about politics.
No, I don't.
You wouldn't think anything of it. But the South is just so seen as other, maybe not quite another land in which your mother is just as likely to be your sister. There's definitely a stigma, even with the New South, which has risen since then. The Sun Belt, Charlotte, all these. Thriving metropolitan
areas. You
areas.
Definitely do a New South. Well, a Carmichael show, was set in Charlotte, so it's sort of New South. But of course, unless we're only considering South White, which
the Tyler Perry shows have the South covered.
They do. This is true. Maybe there needs to be a rural Tyler Perry.
Yeah.
rural equivalent.
Larry the Cable Guy?
Yep. Yeah, that stuff
how does that not happen?
There was an attempt, right?
I don't...
He never had a show?
He might have.
Big Bill Engvall had a show.
That's true. Jeff Foxworthy had a show. There's been attempts.
Yeah. I think you could do it.
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting to me about Hee Haw is a time capsule. Despite being timeless in a way, it's a time capsule because of the look at the South and rural America, as well as the format, the variety format, which is kind of long gone, this type of show. So I enjoyed revisiting it for this, actually.
I did enjoy revisiting it.
I thank our listeners for voting for it.
Yeah.
As well as for the other ones.
After the end song, you might hear a little bonus feature featuring one of our listeners telling a Hee Haw story.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Also, let's mention the voting. We're going to have another vote up soon for another category, and we'd certainly like to get your votes.
Yes, I think it will interest all of you, and I expect an enthusiastic reaction to this one because I think we've got 3 interesting choices.
Yeah, you'll be able to find that again on multiple locations. The website, battleofthenetworkshows.com, the Facebook page, which is Battle of the Network Shows, and then there's a group which you can join if you haven't, and you could vote there too. Thank you for your votes, and we hope you vote in the next category. And that episode will appear towards the end of the season, I think.
Correct.
Well, thank you. We love you. What is that song?
Thank you.
The end off, the end of Hee Haw.
Turn out the lights, the party's over.
Is that what it is?
Oh, I think that's Don Meredith. Gloom, despair, and agony?
No.
I don't feel that.
Yeah. They say something, Roy and the whole gang, they sing a little song.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, something like that.
Get.
Yeah. That's it. Thanks, everybody, and then get.
Yeah. But come back next week for our next episode.
That's right, and then the donkey comes on. Yeah, we didn't really talk about the donkey, but pro-donkey, anti-donkey.
I'm more a fan of Beauregard, but the donkey did probably do a little bit to diminish the image of the show. We'll say that. The animated donkey did not have the sophistication of some of the musical stylings of Buck Owens and Roy Clark.
And there were some animated pigs, too.
Yes.
Dancing pigs.
Because there was actually a song.
Yeah.
Yeah, built around. Well, you know what? Maybe we don't need to get into that one. That's
All
another aspect of the show that may have dated somewhat.
All right, let's get.
This episode brought to you by Lulu's Truck Stop, serving something that resembles food for almost 50 years. This episode also brought to you by Sample Sales, BR549. That's BR549. One more time, that's BR549, but don't expect an answer. This episode also brought to you by Pickin' and Grinnin'. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/battleofthenetworkshows.
Welcome back for this special little bonus section here where we're going to talk to one of our listeners, friend of the show, Dan, who you might know from recommending the Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder. Mentions here and there. In fact, he got mentioned in this Hee Haw episode, which he hasn't heard yet. And we're going to talk a little more about Hee Haw. So, Dan.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
First of all, you were one of the people who voted for Hee Haw.
I did.
And I want to thank you for that. Can I ask why?
I think I do have a fondness for Hee Haw But
Okay.
it also might have been the lessest of four evils was the count on that. I was never a fan of the
Three.
Dukes of Hazzard. What were the other choices?
Carter Country was the only other one.
Oh, okay, yeah, Carter Country. Carter Country is worth looking at, but I definitely have a fondness for Hee Haw.
Okay.
That is a show that I did watch a lot of growing up in the early '70s.
So the episodes we talked about are from 1975, and one featured Freddy Fender.
Wow.
And his amazing hair.
Yes.
And the other one featured Johnny Cash.
I watched one in preparation on YouTube. It was Johnny Cash and Gene Shepard, so I clicked on that one thinking it was the author Gene Shepard of A Christmas Story fame, and it was not.
Right. Yeah. So this was a different Johnny Cash. The other musical guest was Tanya Tucker's sister.
Oh my gosh.
La Costa.
La Costa Tucker?
At the time, she just went by La Costa.
Ah.
Maybe to differentiate herself, but yeah. So, and his outfit, I already talked about it on the show, but of course he had the black on, but he had a jean jacket with patches all over it.
Okay.
Over the black, and then he had some of those kind of weirdo boots that he wore back in the 70s, like that, were almost knee-high and laced up in the front.
Oh, yes, okay.
We can say you're a little older than Rick and I.
We'll say a little, sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
A little. So you have memories of maybe earlier 70s Hee Haw than we would.
Yes.
Like I remember late 70s and 80s Hee Haw. Not that I doubt there's much of a difference.
I think
other than some fashion.
I think maybe musically there might be a big difference, actually.
Yeah, as country changed, that's true.
Well, one thing I noticed on the episode I watched, and I do not know when it was from, but one thing I noticed was it was just kind of a mainstream country kind of pop thing. Especially, I'm thinking a Roy Clark song. Roy Clark sings "I'm So Lonesome I Can Die," the Hank Williams song, and he sings it more slowly, and on the set it's just him and a guitar, but musically behind him there's of course pedal steel and a choir, a chorus singing, and it's very much like late era live Elvis kind of thing where it's very very produced.
Right.
So it's not, it's so less twang, a little more produced. So it's kind of the 70s equivalent of today's pop country, which is more pop than country, more produced than country. So I think maybe the later episodes, they might reflect what was going on musically at that point.
Sure.
Could be a possible difference.
Right, yeah. We were trying to figure out, do you think the music is live or pre-recorded for the show?
Oh, yeah. Because it doesn't sound like the record. Part of me was thinking that maybe the instruments were pre-recorded and the vocals were live. Mm-hmm. Because another song that I saw was from the Twins. I don't know if they were I can't remember their names. The Hager twins? Hager twins, yeah. Their vocals were live because they were switching off, which is a really good idea for identical twins who sound exactly the same. But
right.
There were a few times when one was singing, the other one would kind of interject little yeahs and things like that, which you can fake lip syncing, but it did not sound like that's what was happening.
Right. Yeah. It's really hard to tell.
But behind them was a drummer, and a drummer in that situation would not be playing the way this guy was whacking away on the drums. It did not sound like the drum track that I was hearing on the song.
Oh. Okay. So his behavior didn't match the audio.
It gave me a clue that maybe it was not live.
Yeah.
And there was no drum buffer in front of him or anything. I mean, he was just out there.
Right. Yeah. It looked like in a few of the ones we saw, like some instruments weren't plugged in.
That's a clue.
Like there was one where Roy Clark and some other guys did just an instrumental, and they had like the big bluegrass mics up, and somebody started before they were supposed to, and he made jokes about it. So I think that was probably live.
That was probably live.
I don't know. Yeah. So, maybe it's a combination. The vocals seemed kind of live, though, on most of them.
That's what I was thinking, yeah, that they did live vocals.
Yeah, that could be. And in ones where they're like that one you mentioned with Roy Clark, they're using a boom mic or something.
Yeah, probably,
off camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the twins, they had a single mic stand between them, and it was like a big condenser mic.
Yeah.
So you could hear one of them was playing acoustic guitar, the other one was playing a tambourine. So all of that was going into that one condenser mic.
Yeah.
And then I just don't know. It didn't seem like the rest of the band was playing live behind them.
Yeah.
Because all of that would have just bled into that microphone.
Right. So in just this little conversation, you've revealed, of course, that you're a music nerd.
Yes, that's true.
And I would say you're a comedy nerd too.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And what are your impressions now, or your memories of the comedy on Hee Haw?
Now I haven't checked in with your crack research team, but it seems like it may have been the pitch, the elevator pitch might have been that, hey, let's do a country version of Laugh-In.
Oh yeah, that's definitely
was the impression I got. As far as the other thing the other impression of the comedy is that they just laugh tracked every single line. Yeah, I mean it was clearly canned laughter and canned applause throughout. And it's just a barrage. You're just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what would stick. It's just every sentence is just joke, and there wasn't no long sketches. The sketches were basically consist of a two-hander sketch would be one person would come in, set up. The straight man would repeat set up, and then the funny guy would go punchline.
Right.
Cue canned laughter, and it's just bam, 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 joke after joke after joke.
Yeah.
In different permutations.
Right. And kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
Like especially the one the radio guy.
Yes.
I told Rick on the episode it was almost like he was speaking in another language. Like it was so
a little bit, yeah.
So dense and full of like puns, and I just couldn't follow it at all.
No, nor could I. Yeah. I agree. That was one I was kind of watching. Okay, well here's a guy, clearly one of the comedy guys. He wasn't a musician, and I'm just watching him and going, I have no idea what the joke is, but the laughter machine loved it.
Yeah. So this will interest you since you didn't check in with the crack research team. The original producers of the show were Canadian, and that guy and Gordy Tapp, who plays like the husband in The Bickering Couple and the store owner and like the politician. He's in a lot of the sketches. He's also Canadian.
Wow.
So, and then at some point they sold it, but originally aired on CBS and then moved to syndication when CBS had their rural purge.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, if it was part of the rural purge.
Yes, yeah. So, but it survived, obviously, for a very long time after. And they filmed all of these sketches, like, in a 2-week period, and then would film the music, and then just edit everything together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I guess is how Laugh-In did it, too. They just filmed in blocks.
I didn't know that Laugh-In did that, too.
Yeah. And so, probably every single radio sketch was filmed in a day or something.
In one shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, set up the set.
Yep.
Do all the sketches that take place in that set.
Right. Move on.
And then cut it all together.
Yeah.
Wow.
As you know, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this, other than just to have you on, is you have a particular Hee Haw story that I enjoy.
In which I do not come off well.
No, but it is. You were a child.
I was a child, and like most grade school children, I was a little sociopath. So Hee Haw came on I believe Saturday nights when I was growing up, and we did watch it religiously. None of us were country fans at all.
Yeah.
It was just what was on. I'd be curious to see what the other choices were at that time.
Yeah, sure.
But we just would watch it. I distinctly remember watching it in the upstairs den, so I don't know if it would be like when my parents would go out on date night and it was babysitter night, or if we would just go up there to watch our show while our parents were downstairs.
Yeah.
But the memory you're talking about is every time country legend Tammy Wynette would come on and do a song for no reason whatsoever that I can think of. My brother and I may be remembering this incorrectly, and I really hope I am, but my recollection is that my brother and I would approach the TV, kneel in front of the TV, and begin to spit on the screen. Yeah. I don't know why.
No.
It was just a compulsion that every time she would appear.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but that's the kind of specific kind of story we love here on Battle of the Network shows.
I'm glad.
Yes. Now, I really had, I mean, you've told me this more than once, and I totally misremembered. I had it generalized that it was just a Hee Haw reaction. Like you would be walking through Sears and see Hee Haw and start. But I'd also thought, for some reason, I thought you threw food, which that image amused me too. Especially because I was imagining like mashed potatoes or something.
Yeah, it would have to be mashed potatoes. Otherwise, what's the point?
Right. Yeah.
It's the official food of food fights.
Yeah. You don't want to throw potato chips at the TV.
Not effective at all.
No.
Maybe a slight grease spot if they're wearing silk or something.
Yeah. Well, thank you for embarrassing yourself and for our sake.
You're welcome.
And the amusement of our listeners. Poor Tammy White.
The revulsion of your listeners.
Yeah. So I don't know about the episode you watched, but the two we did, the cast included George Goober Lindsay.
Yes.
Playing Goober. So we were talking about that and the idea of, was there a lawsuit and things, and I related to Rick as best I could, summarized his news radio appearance. So
yes, it's a great news radio appearance. I highly recommend. It is wonderful.
And
if you look down on any of the Corn Pone comics of the late '60s and early '70s, he redeems himself on that episode. It is wonderful.
Yeah,
a wonderful episode of a wonderful show.
Right, and I summarize it. I hope I got it right, but as Jimmy James goes to court because some guy sold him a bunch of stuff. Like celebrity stuff.
A bunch of, fake movie memorabilia.
Yes, and one isn't the Goober part. It's Goober's skull.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the skull of George Goober Lindsay.
Right.
Yes.
And they bring Goober into George Goober Lindsay into as a witness.
A witness for the prosecution. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
For the plaintiff. The
plaintiff. Yeah.
Yes. It's a lawsuit.
Yes. Although that's not what gets him out of the case.
Yes.
The secret word, tubal cain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you said it.
Well.
I got to go paddle myself off now.
All right.
This will be much funnier when you watch the episode, listeners.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we go, would you like to plug your CD?
Oh, yes. I have a CD out of surf instrumental versions of Nirvana songs that Mike was so kind to help me record. And you can find that hopefully via the Facebook page, facebook.com/Surfana, I believe it is. And we're also on, I'm trying to think of the name of the website. Radio Airplay is another website where you can listen to those. We have a couple clips on YouTube. So the name of the band is Surfana. If you look up Surfana band on your web browser, you'll be able to find stuff that we've done.
Yeah, and you should check it out if you like either or both of those musical genres. Nirvana's not a genre, I guess. Maybe they are. They're so unique.
It drops. It kind of drops right into the sweet spot of the 1990s with the Pulp Fiction surf soundtrack and
good point.
The Nirvana era.
Okay, well, thanks again for sharing your story and your Hee Haw memories, and
thanks for having me.
And of course, listening and recommending ideas and all of that. And
quite welcome.
And
my pleasure.
Being in our Facebook group and contributing to that.